I can't believe you've just done that. I can't believe that. That's crazy.
I was going to say, good morning, San Diego. Good. So welcome back to Don't Be a Doorstop. So we are here this fine Tuesday afternoon, or you might be listening to us on a Wednesday because that's when we publish. Yes, so what we're going to do is we're changing the system. Order 66 is in play. I'm glad that I've actually memorized that from last week. So what we're going to look at doing, I need to look at the camera, stop looking at the screen, save me staring down. For all those listeners, you won't care about that information, but all you watchers will. So what we'll be doing is we'll be breaking up today's pod in 3 sections. I feel like there should be like a drum roll or something. But anyway, so what we're going to do is first segment is going to be a segment from both of us. It is practice what you preach. So it's taking last week's pod, maybe doing a bit of a summary or something that stood out, and then how we've implemented it in our week or not, because we can be honest with ourselves. And then 2 other topics, one that Dan brings to the table and then one that I bring to the table. So hopefully we will break it up into 3 segments, share them on different platforms, but also have the segment all together. So we've got long format, medium format and short format for every types of format lovers out there. I don't know how that is as an intro. I'm usually used to the Welsh intro,
That was
babbling
perfect.
through it.
That was perfect. So do you want to kick us off with our practice what you preach?
Practice what you preach. I feel like we need like segment
intros now.
Yeah.
Well, the iterations are coming, so I'm sure a segment intro won't be too bad of a choice for upgrade. So what are we going to do this week? What are we reviewing?
So we're reviewing last week. So I guess today is episode 27. So we're reviewing 26. So as you noticed, we've probably changed the thumbnail. So it looks like Dan's pulling off leaves off his fingers because we were talking about trimming, and it's not trimming your bush, but it's trimming your schedule. That's another part for another day.
Insert sponsor here for trimming application.
For Manscaped.
Manscaped.com.
We've all heard that sponsorship from many a pod. But yeah, so we're looking at how have we took that pod into our week. So what I will suggest from me is I've helped write down everything that's on my brain and then try to schedule a call with Dan from a work point of view to see what is working well, what needs to be sunsetted, which I learned recently is basically letting go of something, putting it down, stopping it, whatever preferred words that you like to do. Obviously, the animal lovers probably won't like the putting the down element, or human lovers, depending on who you're talking about. So sunsetting projects that might be on your mind, or just putting a pause to them. So stuff that might not be working. So that's basically what we did. We've got a lot of projects in-house, out-house, that we're trying to continue our impact and try not to water down our quality. So that involves slowly trimming away some projects that might not have been successful in the short amount of time, but equally we've got learning curves from it. We've took away lots of stuff. So I'll give examples, it'll be easier. So Jobbing is a Welsh jobs board that we've been trialing for over a year now. We've inserted over 1,000 job applicants. No, not job applicants, job adverts. That's a better word. And it's a really good learning curve and process, but we learned that how we wanted to create it was more automated than it actually was. And it was heavily data inputted. We did have a helpful volunteer, but equally we wanted to make sure that we're doing the 80-20 rule, so putting 20% of effort, getting 80% results, rather than the other way around of putting 80% effort and only getting 20% results in that regards. So we were looking at seeing what works for the team, seeing how much it's affecting us, seeing what we enjoy about that, working together, and see if we can move that style of working together onto different projects that are flourishing or ones that we might want to push. Because there's no point just being a dead tree with alive leaves.
Yeah. And I'd like to give a kind of a bit more background to that. So we, at its best, so we ran like Facebook ads, a pound a day, targeting people that had Facebook set in Welsh, which were really, really effective, which basically meant that our pay-per-click was like 6 pence. So that's a really good niche if you want to advertise something in Welsh, get it into Facebook, because you can target based on Facebook being set in Welsh. At its best, that was delivering kind of like roughly, I think, 2,000 to 3,000 views a month. And then when you turn off the ads, there's like a baseline of like 1,000 views a month, give and take. So it's kind of like doubling our organic reach if we have add-ons, which is good. And yeah, I think it was a good project to try and do because there's a good niche, but ultimately it was kind of taking away potentially some of the focus of other projects that are more successful. So it was good to have a discussion about sunsetting that. For me, I think I've reflected on even my own capacity because we're working on Insider, which is the home of unreleased music, which is a music app, a music streaming platform for music artists to make more money from their unreleased stuff. Because right now, your unreleased music is sitting on a shelf collecting dust. And it might be collecting dust because, one, you've not had the resources or time to finish it. Or two, you might not be allowed to release it because you're in some sort of agreement with your manager or record label or whatever. So what we're trying to do is allow you and help you to monetize the stuff that's sitting on the shelf. So I've been doing a rebuild of the app. So it currently is in the App Store, currently is live. I've been doing a rebuild of the app to put in more features and more stability. And so in us saying no to jobbing or kind of sunsetting that, I can carry on focusing all my development effort on this project or this startup, as it were. And the second thing that I've been doing this week is I'm mindful of quotes that we've given out to people for to do websites. And I've realized that I don't have capacity to do those websites. So I've decided to be like, hey, I know I gave you a quote, but actually we are absolutely stretched. So I'm going to have to back out. So if we do win this thing, then we're going to have to back out. So it meant for a couple of awkward email exchanges, but ultimately I needed to be honest and not kind of promise or overpromise. And then I gave in a substitute. So I know a guy from university that does websites up in Manchester. So I was like, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to do this because of capacity issues, but an alternative could be speaking to this person. And actually that has, even though there was disappointment, that has turned out to be that the person that I recommended might end up working out for them, which is great. And I felt kind of a little bit of a prompt this week to message somebody else that I had a quote out like months ago. I sent the quote and they've not come back yet. So I was like, hey, preemptively, I know we sent you this quote, but unfortunately, due to capacity, we're not going to be able to do it because I want my focus, all my spare time, I want to be putting into Insider. So it makes for awkward conversations a little bit because you recognize they're going to be a little bit frustrated and disappointed with you. But the grand scheme of things, it's more important for my stability and kind of mindset and focus to be focused on one thing. So I basically was like, yeah, although I recognize I'm going to disappoint somebody, it's better to disappoint rather than say yes, and do both things. And basically I'm the one that loses out because I stretch myself beyond what I'm capable of doing. So yeah, I would say that's something that I've kind of applied from last week into this week.
Yeah. And that's a good practice segment for moving forward, because I think it's always good having a pod and saying loads of advice and loads of wisdom, but actually it's quite good to self-reflect, use it in our week, or equally not use it in our week and maybe add an iteration from what we've been talking about on the spot. But
yeah, for sure, because we don't want to be all talk, so we want to show you that we are doing it and are having difficult conversations and refining things. And I think hopefully it shows the real side.
ChatGPT AI is so useful. You writing an awkward email, but then it fluffing it out and making it sound a really nice put down. I'd highly recommend it for those who aren't
if you have
English.
if you have, so I wrote it from the heart. I didn't use ChatGPT, but
I wrote it from the robot.
If you have awkward emails that you have to do, then put it in ChatGPT. Sometimes delegating the awkward moment can then feel like less awkward that you're pulling the trigger. But I stood up and took the brunt of it, of any response that came. So be encouraged to. It's okay to get into awkward situations, and it's okay to get into those awkward situations because you know why you're doing it. I know why I'm doing this because I'm trying to focus more and more my time and effort and my energy into this one startup product that's got legs, that's got potential, and I really want to further that potential. It can become a hard situation, but I think it's well worth doing it. So
how are you going to segment into the next section?
So I've got a great story. Another thing that happened to me yesterday, actually. So as you may know from the last few episodes, I've been talking about getting into a local squash league. I've never done a squash league before, and I was kind of reflecting on the competitive mindset of an athlete. So a couple episodes back, we kind of spoke about that. And what I'm trying to do is, usually as me, my character, I'm not a bad loser. I'm not a sore loser. And I wanted to figure out whether or not kind of trying harder, putting more effort, could that lead to disappointment that I don't like? And that's why I don't try harder, because I don't like the disappointment. And it's personal disappointment with myself in this particular case, because it's a one-on-one sport. So I played my first league game and won, which was against my buddy Jack. And then I played my second league game, which was against a stranger that we've never played before, because Jack and I have played, so we kind of know each other's games a little bit. So this is first time stranger, and I lost. Now, what was interesting, I was reflecting on, I tried harder, but then I didn't feel sad because I knew that he was just slightly better than me at that in that game. So I think then there's no disappointment or like bad feeling. Now, fast forward to yesterday, Jack messaged me to say he's played the game with the same guy that I played last week and won. And instantly I was like, gutted, because I want to compete well. And of course, there is a bit of like competitive nature between me and Jack. So I was initially gutted. Then I texted him to be like, awesome, well done. Like, that's really good. Because his love language, or one of his love languages, is encouragement, affirmation. So I was like, awesome, well done for you. And then Kimmer was in the room. So she saw me spiraling, be like, I need to try harder. I've got 3 games left. I need to win these 3 games, like trying to strategically like make this happen. And then I allowed Kimmer to message Jack to be like, yeah, Dan's spiraling, knowing that you've won. And then he said, actually, I've written it wrong. I actually lost. Which then I was like, oh, awesome. That feels like I've now won. So Jack has lost one, won one initially. So we're equal, but he's beaten me on points. And then instantly he says, oh, actually, I'm joking. It was actually the other way around. I then was like, oh, awesome. It feels like now I've won a game, even though I've not played a game. So I thought it was funny how I've gone from, disappointed because I want to win. I want to be better. So I need to focus now on my next games to kind of get out this league, because I don't want to, it's 5 players, 2 go up, 2 go down, one stays in the division. So I thought it was really interesting that when I felt that he'd won one, I was like, he's getting better than me, although we're both very good. We're both quite equal. I don't want him to get away. So there's a competitive nature that came out, which is interesting. And that made me focus on, right, I need to take seriously these next 3 games to make sure I win them. Yeah. And then the second part of like, as soon as he said, oh, he made a mistake, he was joking, I wet myself laughing, not literally, figuratively speaking, because I thought it was funny that he did that. And then I feel like I've won a game somehow. And the fascinating nature of that is like, there's some aspect of like, maybe it's because, every now and again he wins, every now and again I win. So we're kind of like to-ing and fro-ing on how we win. Is it because I feel like sometimes I can beat him, therefore I want to beat him overall? Versus, this person is beyond me, so I can't beat them, so it's okay, so I don't feel so passionate about it. So I thought that was incredibly funny, of the flip-flop of competitive versus not. And the fascination that I literally had not played a game. And because he said, actually, he lost against the same guy that I lost against, that it felt like, oh, great, I feel like I've won now. So the whirlwind of emotions around like trying harder, disappointment, or kind of like focus on, right, I need to win these next 3 games now, and the strategic nature of that, versus the forward facing, like, well done, man, like really happy for you kind of thing, you know, and that's like, I should do that anyway, because that's good to do regardless of whether or not, you know, I'm like, right, I need to beat him now, you know, because it's not about, you know, not encouraging somebody for doing something good, even though, oh, now I need to do some more. So
I thought you were going to do
what's
that.
Your thoughts on?
I thought you were going to do that classic chat of obviously pre him telling you he lost again, but if he won, to be like, it's because I tired him out, because that's a classic one of being like, I took all the punches, you just got the knockout.
Yeah, I gave him the strategy to win. That's why I was like, well, he does this, yeah. And it reminds me of that. I'm not sure if you've seen the meme where there's a guy wearing a mask and he's absolutely crying behind the mask, but the mask is a smiling face. So I very felt that it was that in the moment of the initial thought. Then he flipped it, and I thought it was incredibly funny. And I was just, you know, being encouraging, you know, credit where credit is due and all. So I'm finding it incredibly fascinating to examine this competitive mindset, because I'm not the sporty one. So it's interesting to kind of like go into that, which is probably new. It might be new for people listening. It might not be. It might be like, well, of course you're going to feel those things, because I play football every week, or I play hockey every week, or I go swimming every week, or whatever it is, you know, do competitive stuff. But yeah, what's your thoughts on how you would reflect in the same kind of situation?
I think, I'm not entirely sure. I think I would probably congratulate, because I'm normally quite good at encouraging others off the bat, but internally, I'd be like, I need to beat everyone to then push him down. Like, because at the end of the day, if it is 2-up, 1 stays, because those are the bits that you're probably aiming for. And if you started, I started at the bottom, now I'm here. Like, you want to be promoted. So basically, you're going for 2 spots. And if your mate has won, basically, you're like, okay, I need to take the other position.
Exactly right. We need to ride together, as it were, bad boys for life type approach.
But to be fair, I think a new sport, a new challenge. I know you've done squash for years, but not on like a competitive level, more socially.
You say years. I've done it like 6 months when I was a kid.
Still, that's years. Those professional golfers that are professional when they were 12 maybe. And then sacked it off. It's like, actually, it's as if you're starting from fresh again. So I think it's giving you that grace period of, I think I wouldn't care because I've not invested enough into the sport, into the lifestyle or whatever. I'd be like, I'm just finding my feet. What does this look like? With my adult brain, if I went into a new sport now, obviously I'll be absolutely livid if I was a kid, like with hockey. I used to destroy my weekend if I lost. Obviously, I wouldn't show it outside because you still want to have a good time and enjoy your weekend. But I think internally, you'd be like, I understand it when professional footballers say they lose on Saturday and they basically can't do anything till Monday, or don't want to do anything. It's like depression based off losing or winning. It's like, I totally get that. I don't enjoy it, and I wish I didn't have it, but I totally understand it.
It's like so 2 things. It's like the choice of like disappointment and prolonging the disappointment. Right, the suffering of that. So there's pain in the loss, but the suffering thing can be elongated because you still go back to the disappointment thing of the pain point. One extra thing I noticed when I played Jack first time, I was a little bit more quieter because I wanted to kind of get it right and focus on strategy. And I found that was fascinating because I've had that incident before where you're a little bit quieter, less chatty before something happens. Like if you're doing a public talk, you're a little bit more like internal focused and you're less like friendly and chatty. Whereas when I did the second game, I was able to chat and stuff and still perform, but obviously lost the game. But it's fascinating when you're trying to focus. Sometimes you go like quiet. And I'm always fascinated with people when they're able to still converse and have this chat and then go onto stage right now, that they're not needing to get into a zone of focus before something. So the differentiate, I don't necessarily, I think ideally my preference is to be like, we can chat and then I can beat you in this game. And the chatting doesn't like throw me off focus, basically. Yeah. And I think that's the ideal situation. Although when you're initially starting something, you'll be like quiet, in on yourself, and you won't be able to like speak or like have much new information delivered to you.
Is the chat more of a social chat, or is it like getting in someone's head, like pretending that you've got some injury so they go easy on you, or say like poking them out on stuff?
It's more so just
starts at the start.
Yeah, the game started before we got on the court, isn't it? So it's not necessarily like the strategic kind of like trying to throw somebody off or get into the break.
Okay.
Just like if it's any sort of like
socially.
actual conversation, right? Like a social conversation with anybody. It reminds me of, I shadowed this guy that was our old church leader when we went to this event, and he was meeting a load of people before then he needed to do a talk. And he met a load of people taking all this information, having proper conversations. And then he was like, right, I just need a few minutes to run over my talking points before I do the talk. So I was like, cool. He's able to do all this stuff, and then he just needs that 5 minutes beforehand. So I've done something similar where like I've done a talk and I need focus and I can't speak to anybody. But then now I'm like, actually I can speak to people and it doesn't throw me off doing the talk. So it's a fascinating like focus thing. And my ideal state is that I can have a full-on conversation and be super in the moment, and then switch and be in the focus moment when it needs to happen, and also succeed in that moment, like deliver a good speech or win a good game kind of thing as well. So I thought that is fascinating. But yeah, the decision to hold like the disappointment or the kind of like the suffering of that moment. I remember somebody saying that they allow 24 hours. You can be sad for 24 hours. After that 24 hours, I think it was like in one of those American football documentaries, 24 hours, you can be like sad about stuff. But then after the 24 hours, right, we get back and train. So that's like another thing of like a choice. Because let's say, for example, now you were upset about something, or you were like suffering with this, with the thought of like, oh, the disappointment. Let's say right now, somebody said, hey, we need this task to be done right now, and it needs to be completed by the end of the day. You would basically focus all your effort on that task, and therefore the disappointment would disappear, right, for that moment, which therefore means you have the ability to control your focus and deciding on to focus something. So rather than elongating the suffering of like meditating and thinking about that thing, like just imagine a boss came in right now, or a parent came in, or your child came in and say, oh, can I have help with this? Or can you do this right now? You would literally switch, which means you have the ability to switch. Yeah. That was from a podcast I was listening to, 2-hour-long podcast. But yeah, nice. So yeah, that's Dan's squash adventures continues as my documenting my competitive mindset continues as well. So we got next point.
So the final segment of today, I'm leaving space for all those tears that people will be having, is actually hopefully tears of anger. Because that's what we're going to do. Definitely destroyed a couple of people's ears just then. As they're like, it's a bit quiet, let me just turn it up. So we're looking at anger. So if you don't have depression through aggressive nature of disappointment through a squash game, you might be on the opposite side of fury, rage, and anger. So I jokingly put it down as a topic, saying putting a lid on pure anger and caring, putting a lid on pure rage and caring through anger. And Dan said, yeah, let's talk about that today. So that is the segment of today. I will talk about my little pieces. I did a course. I feel like every time someone speaks about the past, I always reminded of Sheldon Cooper explaining physics to Penny and goes, back in 1988, and it's like, I don't want to know that, just tell me what you learned from it.
Like in ancient Greece. Yeah.
So back in 2022, that sounds probably better than just back before Christmas. Back in 2022, I did a course, and it's basically learning about triggers and emotions and stuff like that, because I felt like it would be useful for me, as I felt like I was wrestling with understanding what my heart was saying to my body and head. As I'm a quite logical person, I knew something was happening subconsciously, so I thought I'd explore through doing a course, learning a bit more, and then sort of, sifting through my heart emotions to understand what might be going on deeper. And as I've been connecting my heart back to my body and bringing back connection, which sounds so lovely and amazing, I have connected rage back into my body. And I think it is an interesting one of, I guess it's dealing with disappointment, dealing with pain, dealing with difficulty. I think as a kid, I used to get angry quite a lot. People probably wouldn't know this because it's more internally, I'd feel it. But I know anger can look very ugly. It can be quite painful if it's done through punching people or yelling at someone. So I'd never tried to explode that anger or frustration onto people. A lot of the time I'd channel it into, I'd get frustrated that, let's say I've lost the ball against someone in football or hockey, and I'll basically chase them down and exert that anger through my legs, and class it as a new source of energy, which would feel amazing. But right at the moment, I've only just started to get back into sport. But before that, actually having anger and frustration that you don't have anywhere to go with it can be actually quite tough, because by looking at anger or frustration, then it sort of in its face, I think someone said it's a secondary emotion towards other things that's going down deeper. But I think when it feels like a ball of fury inside you, sometimes you can't look past that you're just angry because you're angry. And I think that's where sport for me was very handy to do sport. And then afterwards you would then simmer down to then realize, I was angry because actually there's been a buildup of ... like frustration at school or whatever. So we're talking about anger and how we deal with it. What's our thoughts on it? Trying to be caring, not only to others, but also to ourselves when we get angry. But yeah, so what's your thoughts on that?
I think, again, from this podcast that I was listening to yesterday, so it's basically how to, I found the thing, so it's Feel Better, Live More, episode 275, how to become happier today. It's easier than you think, right? And one thing that jumped out to me is they were talking about happiness is a default position. When you are born, you are happy, and basically you cry because you are unhappy. And then your parent will resolve that issue to make you happy again. So that's your default position, is happiness. And you want to basically in life always kind of revert back or kind of come back to that state. When it comes to anger, anger is just literally pure energy. As Tom said, you can either use that energy to punch somebody in the face, or take a chunk out of the ground while playing golf, or change the world with it, right? It's a choice to do that. And I think, again, when it comes down to secondary emotions and things, there's typically this totem pole of personality traits. And what typically happens is, like, depending on where you are, is kind of like there's a split between the normal version of yourself and the shadow version of yourself, which means this shadow version is like when you're your worst version of yourself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people hit, like, let's say giving like an offensive joke, right? Somebody will like take the mick out of somebody as their like first position in the shadow self. And then hitting like physical outlash of something would be like the lowest of the low. So it is in there. It's just whether or not you get to it or not, depending on the level of like the worst version of yourself as a degree. Whereas some other people have your first level of shadow self is bang the table or something. Whereas they would never, ever think to say some like cutting remark about somebody, you know? And I find that fascinating that each of us have a different order, and it's kind of tied into Myers-Briggs and then looking at like shadow self. And I think it's something functions.
Cognitive, word. Was it?
Can't remember. Something, yeah, I don't remember. But this like shadow version, whereas like what is like anger to you? Is anger like lashing, physical lashing out? Is that like very, very low? And if it's not, if it's like higher on the totem pole, like Tom said, it's like figuring out why. And I think a lot of the time, you typically push it down because there is no positive way, or you don't think there's a positive way, because people assume that fighting is the way to get out anger, right? Fighting in a physical sense, rather than fighting for example, you know, writing a piece of policy or writing an email to somebody, like from a legal perspective or a justice perspective or a fairness perspective. And I think it's interesting when you think about, cool, I feel angry. Sometimes you feel angry because of an injustice or an unfairness. And actually that is a good quality, and it just comes out as then anger. Whereas really it's like, oh, I love fairness. I hate double standards, and I love the stability of that. So then you can be like, cool, I don't need to be annoyed that I'm like angry all the time. I can be like, oh, I'm angry because I value fairness. So if you can kind of go past that initial piece of energy to be like the emotional thing or the principle behind that energy, it's more like reassuring that that's the case. And then you can start working with it and reckoning with it to be like, cool, if I value fairness, then maybe I should just speak up for people more. When I see something happening, maybe I should speak up more. Or if it's happening to me, if somebody's bullying me at work, maybe I should like speak up and like not allow that to happen because I value fairness, rather than just angry and have that energy that then doesn't go anywhere or isn't utilized and ultimately pushed down and then rears its head because you go into your shadow self and you use that anger on, or use that energy on somebody that doesn't deserve that to happen to them. You know, so I find that a really fascinating observation. Yeah.
I think it's reminded me of a social post I saw this week, and it was basically something that Gary Vee's done is VFriends, and he's created different characters. And one of them is a decisive duck. And basically the point of this duck is a little cartoon. The point is, do a decision and then you live with it. You either learn that you've done something bad to then take it on to your future, or you learn that you did something good, amazing, you can celebrate it. But actually by not doing a decision, you're stuck in this sort of limbo world. And I think so easily, I don't know if it's Christian background or British background or whatever, is when sometimes you've got anger, you've either got people that are lashing it out, headbutting people, kicking people, element, extremism, and then you've got the bottling element, and it's like you don't need to go to the full extreme, but it's like, what could an action be, and be decisive in it, that it might not be the best decision, but you can basically forgive afterwards, say sorry, learn about the other person or learn about yourself. And sometimes it is just going, actually, I'm going to try and do this a bit different, because actually sometimes you carry that weight of, oh, I didn't do anything, and I'm angry, and I'm frustrated, and now I've got shame, now I've got guilt. And then you feel even heavier going into seeing that person, being in that situation the following day. And it just gets bigger and bigger, rather than just having a light account with people. It's sort of balancing having a balance sheet, but for your mental and emotions, like you would finances. And it's recognizing, that you can just level yourself out, not only through positive nature, but actually what does it look like dealing with the negative side, because that's just as positive than just getting stuck and staying in the positive nature, because we can't always do that. I think life is a roller coaster. You'll have both. So it's learning with coping mechanisms of how do you deal with both. Actually, we're living through different forms of crisis. So we might be on the spectrum of being in the negative and might be more frustrated and more angry than ever. But it's like, okay, what does that look like for my personal life, my friends, my family, my community, the people I connect with, maybe online, further afield or globally. And it's just, seeing what works and fleshing it out. I don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring it out. I know I've got a pull-up bar and I do a lot more press-ups. So sometimes I get angry. Doing something physical massively helps me. Plus it keeps me healthy, and it means that I can focus my anger into pushing or lifting myself. So then I actually gain from it in the long run. But
ultimately, if we frame anger as energy, then how are you dissipating that energy, aka using that energy out so it doesn't get stored up and build up in this sense of pressure? So is it the press ups? Is it talking to somebody and venting to be like, this situation really annoyed me and angered me? And then also relive, kind of like going past the energy to be like, what's the emotion? Is it because you really value fairness or like justice? And you hate double standards or whatever that kind of like backwards kind of like emotion is that results in that anger. Sweet.
Good way to end the pod.
Yeah, one thing I thought we should, because pods usually you listen to the first 3 seconds and then you disappear. It might be that we snippet a part of this end bit, the end summary that you did or the end summary that I did as the first bit, front load it. Then we run the trailer.
I thought you were going to pretend to be like, let's laugh crazy, and then we'll just put that at the front. And then they'll be waiting all the way through it to be like, when did they have a laugh at that massive, great, amazing joke?
That should be a funny thing. So let's do after 3. 1, 2, 3. I can't believe you've just done that. I can't believe that. That's crazy.
I feel like I need tears.
That'll be the intro. So put that as the intro. And then hopefully people will watch it through all the way to see this moment that it was staged.
Exactly. And if you stayed on just to watch that intro, life sucks for you. I'm joking. And thanks for the view. That rhymes.
It's funny that we had our first unsubscribe because probably the last week we were saying we're not going to do Welsh content anymore. That's what we're putting it down to. So we appreciate you coming back every week. And if you've not subscribed, please do. We really appreciate it. And I think for this week's thumbnail, Tom is going to be our model.
Ooh.
And I think you should do your best rage or anger face, or your annoyed gesticulation thing. So then it can be framed inside of our
I was going to do
putting a lid on pure rage.
I don't want it to be cropped out.
Yeah, the Hulk smash one.
Or give it like that.
And until next time, thanks so much for watching. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.